perceive Americans?
I feel like there's quite a lot of, I hate to say it, but mockery involved.
I think a lot of people think Americans are extreme.
Do you think that the British think that they're better than Americans?
I think some do, yeah.
There's a lot to make fun of, I think.
We're also fantastic at queuing as well. That's another great thing.
I think British people making fun of Americans is just cope. Like, they just... Like, a lot of Americans during the Harry Potter era were Anglophiles. And then that just kind of passed away. And now everyone's, like, shitting on England. So it's just, like, pure copium to be like, oh, no, we actually hate them ourselves. Also, British people hate everyone. Have you met a British person? Like an old British person, at least? They don't just, like, hate Americans. They hate everyone. They literally colonize the entire planet. You can't do that without having, like, incredible disdain for major populations. Also, they hate themselves, too. There's also that. New Hasan hater meta just dropped, probably. Little do they know, at the top of the hour, they still get to see the 3-minute ad break. Haters, lovers alike, unless they subscribe for $5 or for free. Why didn't you say you haven't contributed to an argument when you've literally been quoted in academic papers? Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
About us.
They're rubbing me the wrong way because they're too extra. It doesn't seem like it's genuine.
Today, I am in London to get to the bottom of a very important question. For as long as I can remember, I have had the sense that the British look down on Americans. This is a generalization, and therefore doesn't apply to everyone, but it's a strong enough trend that I felt I needed to investigate this further. Here's a quote from Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, that perfectly captures the feeling that I have about this. With some, the anti-American sentiment ran very hot. I was reminded of my childhood, when people warned me all the time about Americans. Too loud, too rich, too happy, too confident, too direct, too honest. I'm very curious what people are going to have to say about this. I have a feeling I'm onto something, okay? So, having said that, let's start talking to some people.
Excuse me, shooting a video for YouTube. Could I ask you guys a question?
There's a lot of guys that do stuff like this, where they, like, you know, annoyingly go up and ask people questions. He's the only one I like. Him and also the Japanese guy that we were watching yesterday. What was his name? Satoshi?
Really great. You hate it? Okay, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
Not that easy today, huh?
No, it's not.
I was wondering if I could just get a moment.
I've got too much
We're
time.
off to a very slow start. That's okay. Let's just change up the spot because I'm feeling like there's enough projections in that 100-meter radius.
You know, I always feel really terrible that everyone's first attitude is, oh, you're from America, are you? Oh, okay. You know, which is always a bit, you always feel a bit bad about that because I'm not entirely sure why we still do that, but you know. It's,
How do you feel perceived as Americans by the British here in London?
A big, stupid, bellowing oaf. Really? Yeah, genuinely. I always feel like...
What is this fit? Like, I feel like she's done it. You know what I mean? She's already an oibruv. Like, the fit is screaming like, hello, how are you fucking doing? It's me, Mary Poppins, yeah? Fucking hell.
I have to apologize for being Americans. Like, I know my accent's the worst thing you'll hear today, but can I just order a coffee?
My experience, I feel like, has been a little bit different. I think that might be somewhat informed by the fact that I'm a student here. Okay. At first, there was a bit of a learning curve. Like when
She had to blend in like that to look like a Victorian child so she doesn't get a shanking, a chefing, yeah? A fucking chefing is upon you. Fucking hell.
I would speak loudly on the tube. I would kind of get looks and people would tell me, like, you're being American, like, can you maybe not?
There's definitely sort of a sense that there is a lot of difficult things going on in America, and that America potentially could be quite a difficult place to live, especially if you're of colour or from the Middle East.
I have to admit, the inspiration to make this video came when I moved to Europe. As I've explored in previous videos on this channel, many Europeans have mixed to negative views of Americans as dumb and uncultured. But to my surprise, the same goes for the British. I've come to realize that the only people that see the British as intelligent and sophisticated are the Americans. Many Europeans, like the Portuguese or the Spanish, see a very different reality. The British that go off on holiday to get extremely drunk and break things. The British that are isolationist with Brexit. The British that don't learn foreign languages, that stick to their native tongue. Wait a second, I thought to myself. That's what Americans
That's American.
do. Other people do this as well?
How dare they copy us?
I kid, of course. Still, it does feel like the Brits act like the Americans
Okay,
of
this
Europe,
song
but I
is
am
the
certain that
okay. This song is the permanent Johnny Harris song. I'm sorry. When I hear that background music, I'm like, oh, by God, that's that Johnny Harris music. I'm about to be explained how NATO is the most important thing that's ever happened to the world.
is not something that they'd like to hear said about them. I mean, no offense. I am American after all. Does that not prove my point though? No one wants to stoop to the level of Americans. I felt I had to get my answers directly from the source.
My perception is that the UK is 1 foot in Europe, 1 foot like in the Americas. It feels like it should be in the middle of the Atlantic. Do you agree with that?
I think that's a pretty conclusive idea. Yeah, I think that's definitely true because a lot of people wouldn't even class England as being in Europe. You know, even in England when you...
Fun fact, Europeans have thought this about the English since Shakespeare's day. 400 years of the English being the ugly stepchild of Europe. Brother. I've said this before. The English rest on the laurels. Ne? Hangisi. Oh my God. What did you get? More delivery? That's crazy. It is. The Spanish have the audacity to consider themselves culture. They have both the worst Spanish food out of all the Hispanic countries. That's actually a very interesting take. I have never thought about it like that. Because I was about to say, like, Spanish food is bomb. Like, it's significantly better than, like, German food, for example. But then you hit me with something that I hadn't thought about before. If you compare it to, like, Latin American food, all of a sudden, Spanish food is no longer as bomb. It's still pretty good. But only when you compare it to its European counterparts. Very interesting. Have you tried Venezuelan food? Is dog shit? To be fair, I don't think I've ever had Venezuelan food. I don't know. I have had Peruvian food. This shit is bomb as hell. Dude, shut the fuck up. Schnitzel with sauce, hollandaise, asparagus, and potatoes, fucking amazing. Yeah, this is our German chatter, of course. Classic. Listen, dog. Everybody knows Germany and England literally get carried by the people that immigrated there, okay? The greatest German food is doner. The greatest British food is literally Indian food. Is a chicken tikka masala, okay?
You talk about going to Europe. No one ever thinks you mean Doncaster. They always think you mean Germany. You do get some perception that everyone's some sort of like a Valley Girl accent or something like that, and I think that annoys people quite a lot. But then again, it's the same way that English people are often perceived as all sort of being from London. The American dream, making yourself better and being seen to be self-improving, and it's a lot about earning money and being the best you can and going to the gym and all these kind of things.
Do you think are you saying it's positive or negative?
I think it's a positive thing for Americans, but I think the way it's perceived is often everyone goes, oh, get out of my face, you know, because no one likes to enjoy someone else's success, at least in England anyway. I think in America it's probably very different. Oh great, you got a promotion. Fucking bastards, you know.
The identity of being American is like such a thing.
Right.
That I don't think other places have that as much.
I don't think people are necessarily dumb, and I don't think it's a question of being dumb. I think it's just that there's this idea of like, yeah, being the best. To think that like people in America, depending on where you're born, you can have access to care or not, it's frightening.
Yeah, I mean, this is the overarching social democratic Europe principle is like, what the fuck are you doing? You have so many guns and you have no health care. Something has gone very wrong here. And they're right to say that. They're absolutely correct. Okay? Yeah, America is a proto-capitalist nation pre-industrial revolution. Like, America was always destined to be the most hyper-individualistic, most psychotic, most violent force on the planet. Our geopolitical positioning also accelerated that post-World War II because we didn't withstand the damage of Nazi Germany in the same way. But, like, from the jump, we were the most capitalist. constantly expanding. You know, manifest destiny, expanding further and further west. It's a nation of small business owners, okay, and charlatans and con men and people that were too busy selling each other snake oil. So, you know, we never really stopped. What is this? It's explained really well here.
And then, you know, where else? This is the new world, you know, and the other part of the new world is America. People think that's got a lot of promise. Still, even though we're all a bit funny about Americans now, a bit, I think the reason that happened, all that bad feeling about America, is apart from everything that they've done. It's because American stupid people sound stupider than every other kind of stupid person.
It's true. This is also true because the language is like so boneless in comparison to like the British person. A smart American person. A smart American person will still sound like this. Okay, not to say that I'm smart, I'm not, but you know, it's still kind of crass. Whereas the dumbest British person can still have an accent. So, like, for Americans, we hear British people, or we hear Irish people, or we hear any kind of other fucking accent, and we go, wow, that's a smart guy. He speaks a different language. He speaks English.
Some people are just thick, but you put up with them. But Americans are annoying when they're thick, because they say, well, you know, if they're talking about one of those terrible incidents that happen every other day in America, they say, well, you know, I was there, and the guy came in, and he had, like, a gun, you know, and he was, like, shooting, and everybody else was totally dead. And you just, it sounds a little divorced from reality somehow. So I think that's why there's this ill feeling about the place sometimes, because of everything the administration has done. You know, it's like the really bad flatmate of the world. Oh, sorry, did I break all your shit? I didn't know it was yours. Yeah, I'll replace it sometime. With my stuff. And because it's the only remaining empire, of course. You had an empire once. Britain had a great empire. And impressively commandeered and sequestered from the rest of the world. With great style. You just marched in and said, you, and you, fuck off, we're having tiffin. And everybody sort of went, oh, right, I'm gonna be off now, that's fine. And it took centuries for people to go, hang on a minute, we live here. The American style is totally different, far more insidious. This empire is run on a totally different basis. What America does is it has a nosy in some place, some war-torn, fucked-up place, and that looks for oil or chocolate or whatever it wants. And all the indigenous people obviously get pissed off, and they begin to meet. They begin to foment. They ring each other up and say, you, Habuwa, let's meet and foment at 6 o'clock. In the local bombed-out cafe, they gather round and they say, what are we I'm doing a pan-global accent, okay? It saves time, because America gets around a lot of places. And this represents poverty. Hey, listen. Hi. Haguga, listen. What are we going to do about the fucking imperialistic Yankee big dog, huh? What are we going to do? They come in here, they look around, they take our stuff. What are we going to do? I'm talking to you. Put down the beans. Listen, what are we going to do? It's kind of Al Pacino from China via Brooklyn. But and then what America does, while these people are talking, it very, very gradually builds a Starbucks around them. And then they all become addicted to latte and they lose the will to rebel. And then they turn into Americans. After a couple of weeks, the kind of people who come up to me and say, hi, I'm Irish. My grandmother was an O'Flaherty, did you know her? I always say, yes, I did. But then again, everybody did. Now that's a particular kind of American, obviously, the kind of Americans you see in Europe, who often, for some reason, seem to be very generously proportioned. And You see them in museums, blocking up the exhibits, going, what is this? Can we eat it? Where are we? Can we pee? And yet, when you go to America, you see that it's a very, very, because it's so competitive and everything, people are ultra-fashionable and very thin, really. I think the Americans you see in Europe are all the ones who stay in their apartments, get food piped in, and then they're just shipped out to Europe. But the ones over there, you see these amazing-looking people. They don't look real at all, these incredibly exiguous...
Do you condemn this vile racism? No. That's why I'm showing it to you without any interruption.
Women, you know those people who look like they can't support the weight of their own teeth in their head? Stalking in and out of fashionable restaurants. I don't know what they do in there. Maybe they just rub pesto on their legs or something. And you know, they look like they weigh as much as a photograph of themselves. And very fashion conscious. But people have this idea that it's still the promised land. You know, somewhere like California, which everything is fruitful and abundant. But Arnold Schwarzenegger is the governor of California. There's a perfectly ordinary English sentence. How did that happen? Do you know how that happened? Because I'll tell you. You know how he got into that position?
He has an accent.
He got there by lifting things.
Low key, just saying, you're just jealous that you don't have famous people that can be in positions of power in your country. Okay? All right, let's get back to this.
And I don't know how you can speak about being the best when you can't even make sure that everybody's like taken care of. Are you treating everyone the same way in America? No, not everyone is treated the same way, just like not everyone is treated the same way in Europe.
Having been to America a lot, they often ask, obviously as a joke, but just like, do you know the royal family or anything like that?
So do you feel that generally, the big generalization, there's mockery towards the Americans and Americans towards the British is more like cute. We think you're cute.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
How do you feel about Americans thinking you're cute?
Well, it can be taken as a compliment, obviously, but if they think that we're, like, as a country, not really a force to be reckoned with, then just because we do all these, like...
Yeah, because you're not. Get out of here, dude. England doesn't even have an economy. Get the fuck out of here. It's like jelly deals in finance and a financial safe haven for the war criminals of the world. What do you got? Bro, they fell off. They fell off. You fell off. You fell off.
Like things that date back to long before the US was established. It's not really relevant that they can mock us for that.
Is it condescending, would you say?
A little bit.
Or ignorant?
More ignorant. It's not. It doesn't like hurt me. You know?
How do you feel Americans perceive the British, first of all?
They kind of look down on us.
You feel that?
I feel like Americans think like they're on top of everything, and there's always competition between the two.
So do you feel like the British have a chip on their shoulder a little bit because of that?
Yeah, a lot.
Yo,
what do you think?
This is making me patriotic for America almost. What do you mean competition? What competition? Half the reason why Americans love shitting on England, by the way, is because a lot of Americans are kind of embarrassed about like America's disgusting behavior globally. So it's like the one guy that you can point to, at least historically, that has done the same shit for a very long time. But other than that, what competition right now? There's no fucking competition. Well, what is England doing? They got nothing. England is doing whatever the fuck America tells them to do. Get the hell out of here. The only thing England got us beat on the fucking reactionary, the reactionary off, if we're having like a mid-off, the only thing England has us beat on is obviously transphobia. That's it. And even then, we're catching up real quick, okay?
I think the British are better at than Americans.
No, obviously there's like, they have healthcare and shit. I'm not talking about that. And public transportation. I'm not talking about like actually good things. I'm talking about like who's got more fucking clout.
Yeah,
or who's worse.
Really?
More polite.
Yeah. More talkative, more helpful.
More helpful. The British are more helpful.
Yeah, than Americans. But Americans are nice. They're funny. Got good music.
Got good music. Okay. Yeah. Well, the British have good music too, man.
Americans are taking over the music scene.
But I mean, come on, there's a lot of great British music. So here's the thing that I think is going on here. We are not the same, the Brits and the Americans, but we sure have a lot of similarities. Compare us to the Japanese, or to Native Americans, or to Ethiopians, and the differences between Americans and the British seems relatively small. We're like blood siblings in the village that is the globe. So here's what all of this started to make me think of.
Yeah, old era colonial empire and new era colonial empire. It's like, yeah, same shit. We just been doing the same exact shit.
There's a concept in psychoanalysis. I'm going to read you the definition, but it's called the narcissism of small differences. This comes from Freud. The narcissism of small differences is the idea that the more a relationship or community shares commonalities, the more likely the people in it are to engage in interpersonal feuds and mutual ridicule because of hypersensitivity to minor differences perceived in each other. We see this all over the world, between the Argentinians and the Chileans, for example, between the French and the Belgians. And
Japanese are kind of like the British, to be honest, emotionally stunted fasci island with recent naval imperial past. That's a pretty good assessment. I think that in that situation, though, like, there was a taming that occurred. You know what I mean? And much like the British, also, Japan is now a vassal state, too. So, you know, there is that, too. There was a pacification, a forcible pacification of Japan. And now they're both American vassal states.
Indeed, I think this is what is happening between the Brits and the Americans. But at the end of the day, I feel like we make the little things that make us different much bigger than they really are.
The way that we speak and the words that we use.
Yeah.
And again, we were talking about this, weren't we?
Yeah.
About
we were talking
words.
about things like autumn versus fall. And it's like that's often something that people like bring up. And for some, well, it's because it's a simpler word. And it's like, fall, American.
You guys don't
classic.
say fall?
No, we don't say fall. We
Oh,
say
interesting.
autumn.
Okay.
So this is autumn.
But you can say autumn as well. All right, before we go any further, I want to quickly thank the sponsor.
Why is this guy defending? He found himself defending America all of a sudden. I thought this whole shtick was like he kind of hates America. That's why he lives in Europe.
BetterHelp, whose support has made it possible for me to take this trip to the United Kingdom, as well as bring a videographer with me to film these interviews. These videos take a long time to concept and organize and bring to life, and I hope it's visible in the production value that I am really pouring my...
I thought he was about to say, like, you know, it helps me cope with how fucking depressing British weather is. BetterHelp has helped me cope with how shitty the weather is here in England.
Myself into making these videos as high quality as possible. And all of this is possible thanks to sponsor support like from BetterHelp.
The British will incite nationalism anywhere. That is actually kind of true. It got me to fucking defend America a little bit, which is wild because, like, fuck America. Like, I shit on America every day. And then all it took for me to defend America was, like, one British person being like, well, you know, we're a force to be reckoned with. I was like, what? Sorry, what force? Only thing we're forcing is wherever we want you to go. You go there, okay?
A big believer in therapy. There are a lot of people in my life that have been deeply affected by therapy, myself included, and what I really like about BetterHelp is how flexible it is. First of all, there's flexibility in who you're speaking with, as in you can freely change therapists if you're not clicking with the person that you're speaking with, which I think is super important because I feel like it's really important for me to feel fully comfortable to be able to open up with the person I'm talking to. There's also flexibility with regards to how you speak to your therapist, whether that's via text or video call, depending on what you prefer, as well as when and where.
Ethical react to Skip.
This
I'm
is all
sorry.
remote, and so you can
Listen,
easily
BetterHelp
adapt
gave him the
it
bag.
to
I'm
when
gonna
it
let
fits
him
into your
fucking
schedule.
ride it. We're watching his video. Might as well.
Furthermore,
holy fuck,
you
it's
can
a bit
sign
long
up
though.
with BetterHelp. Having said all of that, thank you BetterHelp for supporting my work. And now, let's dive back in.
BetterHelp
Personally,
is bad and you know it, so stop King. I don't care. I don't care that it's bad.
When I come to the UK, I have the impression that I've come halfway across the Atlantic. I'm not just off the coast of continental Europe. And by that I mean, culturally, it feels so much more similar to the life that I had in the US. The convenience of life, the speed, the capitalism, the language.
Everyone speaks English. Everyone's like got the same sort of core values. I'm not necessarily a big Christian person at all, but we all come from this like Christian-based countries. America and Australia are English. There's some things that happen in history, but at the end of the day, we're kind of all the same group of people in that regard.
Culturally influenced.
Culturally influenced by the same group. So I personally don't see many differences at all.
I mean, I've got wonderful American friends who I adore. So that question for me is a difficult one because I think they're great, they're fantastic. I think the differences in the way our language is, in the way we use different words. That's where there's a difference.
So pretty minor.
Yeah.
Do you think that sometimes some of the British media or the portion of the British population that looks down on Americans, is it a way to deflect some of the issues that exist here? And could that be said of all societies?
Yeah, you can say that of all societies, but you can also say that of...
By the way, that's precisely why Americans love hating on England. It's like everything that we hate about ourselves, but like pompous and in the rear view mirror of England. So we could just like point to them and be like, well, they were the bad guys. You know, that's what it is. That's straight up what it is.
About the media, they're always distracting, aren't they, from topics, whatever it is.
America's seen as very alpha male, if you think about it in terms of masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
There's an alpha maleness to Americans. And maybe it's just the way they speak, the accent, but you don't really have that sense of Britain. I think there's a stereotype of the repressed male, that soft-spoken.
Considering we're like right on the edge of Europe, we have more in common with America in many ways than we do with the rest of Europe, which in theory is where we should be more aligned. And I think there's sort of something that can feel sort of slightly odd about that, you know, like with the whole Brexit thing, breaking away more from where we're most closely connected to and sort of being in a situation where, you know...
Yeah, like a belligerent, just like a belligerent nationalist campaign that gave you zero benefits. I mean, it is very American behavior to just like behave like that. It was very stupid. It was not a financially wise choice either.
We're going to end up with chlorinated chicken instead.
There's this tendency to think of Americans as just, you know, they're simplistic, really.
Are you like annoyed by the Americans here?
Sometimes.
I wouldn't say
Depends how they are.
Now, the interesting thing is I love to drag the U.S. through the mud and criticize it for all the things that I think it deserves criticism for. But the second the Brits start criticizing me or the U.S., you have nothing to say. Kind of like I can criticize where I grew up, but you aren't allowed to. And the British, in my opinion, are doing their version of the same thing, criticizing themselves to no end, but no one wants an outside opinion. Maybe we all do this. I think we all do this. It's like pointing at someone else's flooding house when your own house is on fire.
So I lived in America for 6 years. I lived in California, Alabama, and Oklahoma for 3 years.
God damn. Bro, there's a big deviation there. What the fuck?
My accent.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, where in America are you from? I'm like, bro, I'm actually from Australia, but then they give me their little opinions on American stuff. So I've actually had to play defense a couple times since I've been out here.
Are you serious?
I'm so serious. Because they talk about guns or they talk about this, but they don't have like a very good understanding, not just English people, this is people around the world, even in Australia, of the history of America and why those things became what they were. People trying to, you know, throw rocks and then hide their hands.
Yeah.
They don't want the blame to be on them, so it's easy to put it on the big superpower that is on everyone's TV.
My perception is I don't consider Americans necessarily lesser in terms of like lifestyle, culture per se. I just think it's a bit more apparent than it is in the UK, but the UK is just as problematic.
There's always sort of a sense in the past that like America was sort of, you know, 2 decades ahead of what was happening in this country. There is a sense that we're getting closer.
Not a good thing, though. That is true. That is literally true. 100%. European politics, unironically, has gotten closer and closer to American politics, and in a very bad way. And what I mean by that is like hyper-capitalism, the nefarious influence of moneyed interests and lobbying groups, the crippling of like amenities and social safety nets that you took for granted, neoliberalism in general. It actually is happening all around Europe, and it has caused this massive far-right mobilization, not dissimilar to the United States of America, as a matter of fact. So it's very bad, and I keep fucking talking about that, and for some reason, people don't see it. It's really American to think British and Americans as a dichotomy. To be honest, they're the same as the exact spot on the spectrum. So are Canadians, Australians, South Africans, and Kiwis all come from the same cloth. No. I think that there's a difference for sure. At least Canadians like have like a sense of shame over their actions a little bit. Americans and British don't necessarily exhibit it to the same degree. Americans are the worst though on the pile.
time frame?
I would say younger generations tend to be a bit more, and the only word I can think of it is shameful of the heritage. I think it's a lot of things from like colonialization and things like that. There tends to be a lot more shame around it.
We're a small island, right? So we've got a small island mentality, but because we've got a small island mentality, we've got to overcome it by kind of that impression that we're the best. And I think
Bit of a basic take there, May, especially considering Canada's history of colonization. No, I know what I said. You heard me. I didn't stutter. I said Canada, fake or not, at least like exhibits a sense of shame, exudes a sense of shame that America does not. %100. There's definitely like there's definitely more PR efforts made by Canada, in my opinion, to like right the wrongs of the past, even though it's not correct. Like they haven't done it adequately, but at least there's still that consciousness, I guess, that America does not even remotely show. Like, Americans don't even do lip service. We're like, yeah, fuck yeah, we did genocide. Fuck you, suck my dick. Now, it's like funny because it's like basically in a neoliberal fake ass way, what does that represent? That represents land acknowledgements, right? Yeah, every remotely liberal Canadian politician does land acknowledgements. Americans don't even fuck with that. Like, that's not even a thing, brother. That is not even, like, that's not even remotely a thing.
that's changing, though. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a total reflection of society now, but I think historically it has been, of course. Let's flip the question. How are Americans perceiving the British?
My answer to that is there is a power dynamic going on. And for better or for worse, the U.S. is much more of a world superpower right now. So I don't think that the U.S. feels threatened necessarily, like competitive with Great Britain. Because of that, I think there's kind of like they're cute. You know what I mean? Like they're Harry Potter and James Bond and sophisticated and, you know.
He uses words like autumn.
Exactly. But I also think that there's also a major degree of ignorance. Like the U.S. is so self-involved. We're not even paying attention to what's going on elsewhere in the world. So there's not even enough to form an opinion, you know. Now, this video was definitely supposed to be in good fun. I harbor no ill will towards the British. I find our rivalries as human beings across cultures, across nations, to be comical and interesting. It's like an insight into human psychology. And despite all of the, criticizing going on here, I'd like to end on a positive note. I'd like to express my appreciation for a few things that I think the British do better than Americans. Your healthcare system, for one. Also, the Premier League. They say football was invented in England. Mike! If that is true, as someone with Argentinian background, I can only thank you. I also have to thank you for your incredible music. What a contribution to our collective heritage. It is a foreign idea to me to have a royal family, but I respect the commitment to tradition.
I did move here the week that the Queen died, so it was really interesting to see. I think my first impression of the British as a public was that of mourning for their queen, the 14-hour-long line to go see her lying in state. So I think it was a little bit of a shock. This might sound silly, but how procedural the British can be. I noticed that tends to be, every British person I've met tends to be very procedural, as opposed to Americans, I think, are a little bit more, dare I say, free-spirited or individualistic.
My dad put a bread in the oven.
So, I think that's not to say
Wait.
that one is better than the other.
And as a final note.
Oh my God, it was in the it was in the YouTube video. I was like, what? I thought it ended. And then I heard the beeping again.
We are obviously a world of individuals. And so stereotypes never fully work. Still, I find it so fascinating to explore the stereotypes and cliches that we have for one another. Not always, but often there is some sort of basis of truth there. Or else they wouldn't spread and persist as they do. Anyway, having said all of that, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please consider liking it, which tells the algorithms to share this with more people.
There you go. I got you, King. All right.